Hi there. Well, Vaughan and quite a few others have asked about how to end a bad situation with control and restraint and quickly. Well, the short answer is you can't end an ugly situation with control and restraint. And you shouldn't even try to end an ugly situation with control and restraint. If a situation really is ugly and that bad, you've got to end it super fast. You've got to knock them out. You've got to make them unconscious in some way. So when it comes to control and restraint, that's not for ugly situations. Okay, now, caveat on that, police, security, people like that, they may have to use control and restraint. But bear in mind the use of force. Now, if somebody is threatening you with a knife and you're a police officer, you may well find that it's okay and it's reasonable to use a gun or taser or something like that. So again, you've got this use of force thing that's going on that you have to think about. So it's not just control and restraint. You've got to look at the situation. Now, if it's an ugly situation, by virtue of the fact it's ugly, you're not going to be using control and restraint. An ugly situation demands an ugly response. In fact, it demands a response that's a little bit above ugly. Because when you're looking at use of force, if your goal as a police officer or a security officer or whatever is to actually restrain or stop what's going on, the amount of force that you need to use must be greater than the amount of force being used on you in order to negate that effect. And so it is in any situation. You can't just meet it head on and equal it, because you're going to be there all day long trying to stop this what's going on, stop what's happening. So to stop what's happening and end the situation, you have to go above what is being done to you, what is being attempted to be done to you. So when it comes to control and restraint, it's a very, very grey area, which is why the laws on self-defense are so open to interpretation, because every single incident is different. There's a general rule: in an ugly situation, you can't and shouldn't use control and restraint, because that attempt to be nice, if you like, that attempt to use control and restraint is a thing that's potentially life-threatening, or very serious injury could happen to you. That's what you're looking at. That's the potential for it. And it's not worth that risk. So if it's an ugly situation, you've got to be that little bit more ugly. Yeah, I accept that there are times when somebody's being ugly and you're in a position, police, security, whatever, where you may feel that you can only use control and restraint. But usually there's going to be more than one of you. And in that situation, then the amount of force per individual will be less than the amount of force from the bad guy. If that makes sense. So to explain what I mean, if the bad guy is using 100 units of badness on his coming into attack, and there's two of you, and you use 60 each back, that's still more than the bad guy. So you could potentially control and restrain him, if that makes sense. Okay. But again, you have to be aware of the fact that you could be seriously injured or worse yourself. So only you can make that decision at that time as to whether you go for control and restraint or not. And only you can make the decision in terms of how much force that you need to be using. You know, if it's a, you know, a little itty bitty numpty who couldn't fight sleep, couldn't punch their way out of a wet paper bag, and they're unarmed, obviously unarmed, and unable to do anything, then the amount of force that you need to use on them, it could well be that you could do control and restraint, even if they were getting ugly, so to speak. But again, you can't rationalize that, work that out in a split second, because you don't know if they could get armed or if they've got backup in terms of friends, acquaintances, whatever, right by them. Or they could actually be a right good fighter, but you just haven't seen it yet and you've made a mistake. So when it comes to control and restraint, leave that to the people who need to control and restraint. If it's a true self-defense situation, then you need to negate the threat. And going back to what I said before, best way to negate the threat is to have no threat there. So put them unconscious, however you do it, knock them out, choke them out, whatever it takes. But if they're unconscious, they can't hurt you. Anyway, sorry this is done on a mobile phone, by the way, because I'm in the middle of doing lots of other things. Just needed to get this out there and reply. Thanks a lot. I'll speak to you soon. Keep the questions coming.